Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast. And in my last Strixhaven unboxing video, I asked all of you what you wanted me to open up next. And the answer? The Commander decks. So today I'm going to crack open all 5 of the Strixhaven Commander decks and tell you all kinds of stories, anecdotes, and plus just show you what's inside. Ready? Let's do it. All right, we have 5 decks to open up today. There's Witherbloom Witchcraft, the black-green deck, Quantum Quandrix, the blue-green deck, Prismari Performance, the blue-red deck, Silverquill Statement, the white-black deck, and my personal favorite, and the one we're going to start with today, Lorehold Legacies, the red-white deck. And I'm so happy to be able to say that the red-white deck is my favorite. You know, I know red-white has needed some help in Commander. A lot of folks have asked for it. So the fact that this deck is so many folks' favorite, and my favorite too, is pretty awesome. So we're going to go ahead and open this one right up. So here we go. First thing you'll notice, by the way, this packaging is a little bit different. And you can check out some of the articles we have online about this, but the big one is how recyclable this is. This is much more than sustainable packaging than we've used in the past. So it's a whole new packaging redesign on Commander decks that does a couple things. One, make them more recyclable. And 2, one other thing you'll notice is that big oversized card on the front is no longer there. This is not actually a card. There's something else inside. I'll show that to you in a second. But basically, all of our data showed that people just weren't using those oversized cards for anything. They just basically were taking up space and not accomplishing a lot. So this is some brand new, more sustainable packaging, and got rid of that oversized card to give you something else instead. I'll show you what that is exactly. So first of all, we'll crack this open. Take this out here. Now you can use these as counters or victory confetti as it recommends, but there's counters all around the box, which is pretty cool, giving you some extra +1/+1 counters. And these are easy. You just punch them out just like this. You punch them out. You have little cool counters you can use for your games. Represent +1/+1 counters or charge counters or whatever else your deck might use. Now this card, quote unquote card right here, is not an actual playable object. Just here on the front of the box, doesn't actually, you know, do a ton. There's this thing which also punches out on the back as a divider or anything else you want to use this for. But yeah, it's kind of a nifty new packaging design here. I'll also notice that you saw me take it out from the top. There is a much easier way to open it up, which is the bottom. You can just pull this little ripcord right here and crack it right open. So we'll be doing that for the future ones. I recommend taking it from the bottom right here. And then it all comes in this little deck box. Lorehold Legacies looks like this. Got Ozgear, the face commander, on the back. And we're going to open it up. Now, the first thing you'll see when you grab it, well, there's a few things, I suppose, but you're going to see a couple different versions of this commander. And let me crack this open here and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So the first thing you're going to see when you open this up is the commander, of course. You got one commander on the front. But what you might not expect is at the back, right before the tokens, is another version of the commander. What's up with this? Well, I want to talk about this really fast. So we've got these 2 versions of the commander. This is your normal magic card stock, normal size, everything you would expect. This is one that will actually go into your deck. But this is something a little bit different. This is on a much thicker card stock, kind of like a credit card stock, if you can imagine. That is kind of what it feels like a little bit in your hand. You can see it kind of wobbling here a little bit as I move around with it, but it's pretty tough and resilient. This is a kind of a new little thing we're doing here instead of that oversized commander. And the idea here is it's a cool, slightly blinged out version of your commander. And because the commanders don't actually have to be shuffled into your deck, this can start outside in your command zone and you can bring it in, which was kind of the original intent of that oversized commander, but it's not very wieldy because it doesn't fit into a deck box or all kinds of other things like that, where this actually fits into your deck box and carries a little bit of heft. You can hear it kind of like drop down onto the table really nice. Like when I flick it on, it's nice, or if I just drop it down, it's got a good feel to it. It's very durable too. But you can put this in a sleeve, but you're going to feel it, definitely. You're going to feel the difference. So, you know, here is normal card stocks versus this. So you can see how much larger it is. It's a pretty sizable difference. This probably feels like 3 or 4 cards stacked together, I would say. But anyway, it's a new thing that we're doing here. I'm curious on any feedback on it, what you think about it, if you've held one in your hands. Let me know in the comments for sure, because we're definitely planning on exploring this further. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. But now, without further ado, we'll get into the cards in the deck. So starting with Ozgear the Commander. This has done a lot of things at a lot of points in time, but we really loved this ability to exile artifacts from your graveyard and make token copies of them. Thought that was really, really fun. Originally, the first ability had a card draw thing on it, I think, where you could like sacrifice a number of artifacts to draw a card and recycle them. But it was kind of just a one-stop shop, the card that did literally everything. You'd sacrifice the artifacts, you'd draw a card, you'd make them from your graveyard again, you'd draw another card. And this ended up being a package that felt a little more red-white, but it's still very powerful and plays very differently from a lot of red-white stuff that you would expect. Another change we made to this card is only allowing you to target creatures you control with this one ability. The reason for that is that it was just causing a lot of trouble in combat when you could pump anyone's creatures at any time. No one wanted to attack and block or would have any idea what was happening in combat. So anyway, there's Ozgear the Reconstructor, a really cool face commander for this deck. Pretty fun to play with. And then following up is Alabu, the Ancient Witness. Now this is one thing we like to do with the backup commanders on these decks is see what other directions you can take the deck in when you play them. And this is a legendary card that wants you to make an artifact creatures deck. Not just creatures, not just artifacts, but artifact creatures. So it's a pretty fun, different way you can take the red-white strategy, and you can use this as your backup commander, or just go and build a whole new deck using it, which is pretty fun. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the rest of the cards in the deck. This is a reprint card from the main set, Secret Rendezvous. I'm not gonna say too much about this card here. I know there's a lot to say when it comes to this card. A lot of debate among people if this card is good or horrible. And we'll have to kind of wait and see how things play out in Commander, because it certainly plays a lot better in Commander than in 1-on-1. But I actually have an interview with Ari Nie coming up pretty soon in the next few episodes where we talk about this card a little bit more. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. You're going to see some of the Lorehold main set cards hanging out right here first. These three other Lorehold main set cards. Some nice ones: Rip Apart, Reconstruct History, and the Campus for a nice dual land. And then we'll get into the new cards from the main set. So Study Hall. We had talked about for a long time if we wanted to do a land this time around, because it was a 3-color set, and new lands can be really good when you're making 3-color sets to give you a bit of extra mana fixing in the deck. And so we made up a new land. We wanted to try and not make it as ubiquitous as things like Path of Ancestry have been, and certainly not Command Tower, because we're trying to make sure that your commander decks don't just always start with the same cards. That it's not just like, okay, I'm building a deck, I'm going to play these lands 100% all the time forever. So Study Hall will go into some of your commander decks and not others, and that's cool. I like that there's that mix, and you get that kind of Opal Palace-y style feel. Also, so I can get them off the screen, I guess I'll just show you really fast. Here's the deck box. I showed this to you earlier. Here's the life wheel that comes with it. These are pretty nifty for tracking your life total. They go 21 through 40 on this side, and on this side you go 1 through 20 for tracking. Super easy to use. You can do it one-handed. And then here is the insert that comes along with it. I was so excited to get into the cards, I kind of skipped out on the insert, but we're all about Ozgear. You can read a little bit about him here. And I covered him in a previous video too. You also learn a bit about Lashiel, Layla, and Alabu. So if you really want to read this, I'll let you pause the video right here and you can read through all this fine material. Make sure, of course, you soak it all in. And then on this side, it teaches you a bit about how to play Commander. Nice little insert to have around. One thing we've kind of learned is you're never going to learn all of everything you need from a single insert. You'll just go look online. So we kind of give you the basics of what you need for Commander gameplay here, but then assume folks will go online to learn the rest. Okay, so that was Study Hall. Let's keep moving on here. Darksteel Mutation. So these are all reprints. A lot of cool artifact reprints here. Got some of Alara's artifact synergies. One of the cool things when you're building a deck like this is finding synergies across many different artifact matter sets, right? So you've got, a Scars of Mirrodin card with Metalcraft. You've got an artifact creature that brings stuff back that was colored from Alara block. That's pretty nice. Here's some Kaladesh stuff, right? Boros Charm, of course, very reprinted. Arcane Signet, yeah, kind of our new line is we're just going to keep putting Arcane Signet in Commander products. We know people need them for their decks, and even though I think in retrospect we probably should not have made the card, now that it's out there, we want to make sure people have it, because it came out in the Brawl decks originally. They were very hard to find. Now between Commander Legends and this, there's tons of them out there, but since it's such a staple, we're just going to keep making them. So you can expect to see plenty more Arcane Signets in your future. Some, of course, various mana ramp. What Commander deck doesn't want some mana ramp? So you've got Boros Locket, Burnished Heart, Commander Sphere, Hedron Archive. Ichor Wellspring, I love this card. This is a blast to find ways to sacrifice it. I love a card that you read and you're like, okay, there's no way to self-sacrifice it. I have to make it work. Fortunately, with Ozgear, pretty nice to make 2 copies of this out of your graveyard. You can sack it with Ozgear and then, you know, bring it back to draw 2 cards. So that's pretty nice. Here's a card that's shown up quite a bit, Meteor Golem. It's been, you know, when we made the core set, I don't think we anticipated this card would show up quite as much as it does, but 7 mana deal with anything in any color is really nice. Here's the other Wellspring in Scars and Mirrodin block. This and the Ichor Wellspring were like the mirror images, or I don't know, a 2-card mini cycle with each other, which is pretty cool. Little New Phyrexia tie in there. Sol Ring, of course. We never have too many Sol Rings. Truly, whenever I go to build a new commander deck, I'm still like, where are my Sol Rings at? It's around here somewhere. Ancient Den and Artifact Land. Ooh, yes. These are very powerful. People constantly underrate how strong Artifact Lands are. You have to be careful in Commander a little bit, because someone might cast Chroma's Vengeance and blow up your land on accident. But still, the synergies are well worth it here. Okay, let's get into another new card here, Angel of the Ruins. So one of the things we wanted to do here was just make some cool, awesome artifacts that would go right into this deck. And one of the things about big mana cost creatures, when your deck is full of them, well, you just draw a bunch of them and you can't cast your spells sometimes. So one of the solutions that Corey Bowen did with this card in particular was give it plane cycling. So if you're playing your big finisher in your white commander deck, you can cycle it away. And as a bonus, white of course has some artifact reanimation. There are ways to get this back into play. You can, you know, pay 7 mana to double up on it with Ozgear. So it really fit kind of with what was going into this deck pretty well. And also just, you know, that utility of dealing with your opponent's artifacts or enchantments is pretty nice. Yes, the much discussed Archaeomancer's map. I don't want to talk about it for too long because Ari Nia will have a lot to say in our interview coming up shortly. But this is a card that was truly made as to be a white staple to help out white in Commander. I really hope it gets there. I've heard a lot of people be very excited about this card as sort of a white cultivate-y style thing. It's pretty easy to have this be, you know, 2 and a white to be cultivate more or less, or even better sometimes 2 and a white, have them come into play by your next turn. So this is a really great card, and I anticipate seeing a lot of these in your Commander games. The Bronze Guardian. Welcome to Ward. Ward is something we talked about for a very long time, trying to get it just right. We wanted a new keyword mechanic, and we talked about the implementation of if it should be this kind of Frost Titan triggered ability, or just spells that target it cost 2 more, and the various pros and cons of doing so with abilities in the mix. Eventually we settled on this version of Ward, and we wanted to make sure there were some cards in this Commander set that showed it off, so here's Bronze Guardian for you. A nice little creature that grows quite big if you have enough artifacts in play. The Dig Site Engineer, yes. Allows you to just kind of be an engine card, giving you a lot of extra tokens and going wide. When you're making a Commander deck, you're always looking for things that can be good with things you would normally play in Commander. And most decks have artifacts in them, so this is really good in an artifact-heavy deck. But you can also just play this in a deck with a bunch of mana rocks, and it might just turn out okay anyway. 3 mana 3/3 is like, you know, I know body isn't the biggest thing in Commander, but 3 mana 3/3 is still a sizable size to, I guess, early in the game to be able to attack people with. So that's nice. But yeah, this really shines in artifact-heavy decks. I feel like I'm just telling you stuff you probably already know in that case. But okay, the Demonstrate cycle. So we were looking in Strixhaven for something that would be fun to make for as a mechanic in the Strixhaven Commander decks. And the main set had this cycle of cards which you could pay less for, but your opponent got a bonus out of it some way. So we thought, what if we did that here in the Commander deck product? And instead of being a different bonus every time, we would cycle it out and have it be, you could play this card and your opponent would get something for it, but you also got a bonus. And that's where Demonstrate came from. It's a great flavor as well for Strixhaven. And you get to do something twice, and your opponent gets to do it once. The biggest change to these cards is that originally your opponent had to do it, and you basically couldn't opt out of just doing it once. We ended up deciding that it was more fun if you could opt out of doing it sometimes, or opt out of giving your opponent the copy sometimes, because there were times you just didn't want to cast a card like this, which was always a little bit sad. And of course, the abilities outside of Demonstrate changed a lot too. Trying to get them all right and all interesting mixes was was a challenge, but I think we ended up with some pretty good ones. And this white one I'm pretty happy with. 4 mana to blow up 2 non-land permanents, and frankly, if you conspire with another player, you can blow up 3 permanents that you all want to get rid of. So pretty nice card. Lorehold. I talked about Lorehold a bit in a previous video about how we're doing more monocolor legends this time around instead of that third legend in the main deck. So you can go check out that video from I think last week for more information on that. But yeah, one of the new things we're trying out, once again, I get into this when we talk with Ari soon, but it's this thing that triggers once per turn and gives you a card. White needs some card draw in Commander. This is a great way we can do it of, hey, you met this condition, you get 1 card per turn by doing so. And then, of course, there are fun ways to trigger on other players' turns, token makers, and the like. So I predict Lorehold will see a lot of Commander play, both in 99s like this, and also as a mono-white Commander. So cool stuff from Lorehold. Monologue Tax. Yes, another card that has been much discussed. Very much a throwback to Smothering Tithe. And this is another thing we can do. Anything that white can set a rule for and saying you can't do this, you can also get a treasure if your opponent breaks that rule, or a card, depending on what the card does. So in this case, it sets the rule basically that your opponent gives you a card whenever they cast their second spell each turn. This card could have been written, your opponents can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. But under this version, it's like, hey, you can do it. You just give me a treasure for doing so. And especially in multiplayer formats, this ends up being a lot stronger and it helps out white a lot. So great stuff for Monologue Tax. So check out my interview with Ari once again coming up soon for more about this card and others. This is a callback to kind of a polymorphy, Shape a Nui style effect, which is pretty cool. And these are normally red now, so that is one color pie shift that you might have seen here. The polymorph stuff changing from blue into red. Red is really what does this. So yeah, this card is pretty fun, and hopefully you don't take too much damage when you activate it. I mean, first of all, I'll back up. Something that we know we can start doing more of now. Please, people seem to have received it pretty well. Are colored artifacts. We didn't do them for a very long time outside of a Lara block, and recently we started experimenting with them more. Right, giving artifacts colors. And equipment has normally been very, very hard to make because it's hard to make an equipment that is good without being too good, right? You either end up with stuff no one plays with, or you end up with swords, which are, ridiculous. But with colored artifacts, that helps out because the issue with a really strong equipment like a sword is if it's good, it goes into every single deck. Well, when you have a colored artifact that is an equipment, that means it can only go into red decks. So that way it helps narrow down the pool of where that card can go. So this is a take on kind of a red lightning Greaves. It's a little more expensive than a Greaves or a Swiftfoot Boots, but it has this really awesome ability to double up your activated abilities, like an Illusionist Bracers or something. So sort of your Lightning Greaves, Illusionist Bracers team up, and I'm curious if you all like this kind of colored equipment direction. We're definitely exploring it a little bit more. Won't be the last thing that you see. Cursed Mirror, this is one of my favorite cards in the product, actually. It's not necessarily hyper strong, but it just fits a really good space. We're not trying to really make 2-mana rocks anymore. Like there's a ton in Magic. We're not going to beat the Signets and Mindstone and all those. So instead, we're trying to make sure there's lots of interesting 3-mana rocks out there. And Cursed Mirror, I think, is a great example of a really cool 3-mana rock that comes down. You even get a great ETB trigger off of it, maybe. And then it's just a mana rock after that. So this card is awesome. And I've heard of a few folks saying they might even try this in Cube, which I was surprised by, but definitely excited if it ends up being a Cube-worthy card. This is the other new monocolor legend in this deck. Like I said in a previous video, we're making 2 monocolor legends per deck here instead of that third front-facing red-white legend. This is a fun one. There's kind of a wonky build-around. It builds around in a very different way. It wants you to exile cards from your library or graveyard, which of course is very good with things like bottling effects, where you exile your top card and can play it this turn, but also just flashback, all that kind of stuff. So pretty fun build-around Commander. I think we'll see plenty of that. Another one of the big, your hand is choked on big creatures. Well, how about you can cycle this away and reanimate it later? This is another one that kind of the mirror of that angel that we saw earlier. Wake the Past, just get them all back. Yep, this card, it's important that you can end games when you're building a Commander deck. One thing that we often talk about is the game has to end, right? If you're playing in the Biodome Precon, you have to make sure that the game doesn't drag on for forever. Normally when we play test, we set aside 2-hour chunks to play test. And if a game goes beyond that 2-hour chunk, well, first of all, the meeting's over. We have more stuff to go to. So we just have to call it. But second of all, it's kind of our metric for, hey, this game's gone on too long. We need to make sure there are more ways to help the game end. And this is a great example of, you're going to cast this, and a decent amount of the time the game will end, or it will propel you forward to the game ending. So Triplicate Titan, yeah, I've got a lot of comments about this, and compared to the what's that card called from Commander Legends? Triniform? Phyrexian Triniform, maybe? And how, how similar they are. These sets were both in flight at the same time, so sometimes these kind of similarities happen. I think we did talk about it. I think this was pointed out, but ultimately it was like, yeah, this is what this deck really wants, is in fact it does exactly this. And it was a pretty cool design. It's really fun to double up on with Ozgear, so we just ended up making both of them. Grozoth fans of the world, unite. If you love 9 mana cost cards, here's another one for you. Then we get into some more of the reprints here. We always want to have enough sweepers in your commander decks. Usually in a precon deck, we aim for 2 to 3 sweepers. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the theme, but 2 to 3 creature sweepers. There's a third one here in the chain reaction. You want enough big creatures. The Gearhawk's great to reanimate, to ready. Awesome, awesome way to get some of those artifacts back into play, reanimate them. One thing I'll note is we got a lot of feedback from folks in previous years about how people love just having extra reprint legends in these decks. It's just awesome they're able to pick up extra legends you might want to build a commander deck around when you crack open these precons. It gives you kind of an extra avenue you can take this precon and do something else with. And so we love including extra legends in the decks, like, yeah, Duretti and Feldon right here. Really fun. You can go and build your own decks with them. Big flyers. I know this was a much discussed reprint. Really excited to get more of these out there. I've never won the game with the last ability. I've gotten close. I've gotten very, very, very close. I think someone killed it right before it was going to happen once. But shout out to anyone out there who has. I remember when we made this card on the Gatecrash design team. It's pretty fun. More dragons that, yeah, sometimes you'll blow up your own artifacts for bonuses with this card. Once again, you're kind of seeing the like multi-format, multi-set artifact matters. You've got a Kaladesh card. You've got a Scars and Mirrodin card. I think this is actually a new Phyrexia card. You've got an original Mirrodin card. Another legendary creature. Classic duplicate. Oh, this has been great ever since it came out in original Mirrodin. Key to the City. Mirror Battlesphere. Yeah, Mirror Battlesphere is like a go-to big artifact finisher. It's just nice that you can cheat it into play with reanimation effects, but it's not too broken, right? It's not the kind of thing that you get out early and then it's really frustrating. It's just like, yeah, if you get out your Mirror Battlesphere, it's good, but it's very beatable. Scrap Trawler, Sculpting Steel, double up on stuff. Kind of like that Cursed Mirror, but permanent. Solemn, of course, artifact deck. We usually figure one deck's going to get the Solemn every year. 1 to 2 decks will get the Solemn, and in the artifact deck, it made a lot of sense. We try to not repeat reprint cards across the decks because we want to make sure there's a variety across all 5 decks. So not every deck has a Solemn necessarily. There's some cards that we do it for, especially in the mana base, if the mana base needs it to work. But usually we try and find 1 or 2 places for a card like that. There are exceptions. Once again, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring go in every deck, Command Tower. But especially for non-mana producing reprints, we try and limit it to 1 per deck. 1,000-Year Elixir. This is great in my Mariki Ribera deck. Going in the lands, we got a Battlefield Forge for a nice pain land. Exotic Orchard is like basically talk about a card that goes into I think every one of these precons. Exotic Orchard gets the job done there. Slayer Stronghold, Temple of Triumph, Command Tower, another artifact land here. Just kind of go through this fast. Great Furnace. There's that other half of the artifact land. Mirrored Landscape. If you haven't checked out this new art, this was in the Zendikar Commander decks originally. Then just a bunch of smorgasbord of lands. Red White has plenty of cool stuff to play with. There's always a lot of fun looking for the cool utility lands. Temple of the False God, I think, is in every deck this year, which some people, I'm looking at you, Benny Smith, have left notes about. I'm a huge fan of Temple of the False God. I agree it shouldn't necessarily go into every single Commander deck, but what you want in Commander is you want more mana and you want extra cards. And Temple of the False God is a card that gives you more mana and only takes up a land slot. It's super good. I know sometimes you can draw only 4 lands, and you have 4 lands, this is one of them, or 3 lands, and this is one of them, and it sucks. That happens such a small percentage of the time. And, in every Commander game you play, I basically plan on getting to at least 5 lands. So, much more than that normally. So this card is great. Highly recommend playing Temple of the False God. It doesn't go in every deck, but it does go in a lot of them, especially most of my 2-color ones with enough lands. I think Tomer from MTG Goldfish did a great article breaking this down, so I recommend searching it up if you want more information. Then you've got your tokens. You got These are all double-sided, right? So you've got 4 treasures with mirror on the back side here. Great for your mirror battle sphere. You got some copy tokens. I'm so glad we have these now for all the copying you might do. We've got some constructs right here. Check out these fun-looking constructs. That's pretty cool. You've got these golems. These are the 3 different arts for the Phyrexian, not the Phyrexian Triniform, the other 9-drop in this set. One for each of its pieces, and then Thopters on the back. I'll note, by the way, if we go back to that previous card, let me just go find that here, that big 9-drop. It is, where are you? Here it is, Triplicate Titan. The 3 tokens, check out this little fun Easter egg, are all different pieces from this artwork here. So you've got this art that kind of shows off the 3 faces of it with the eagle and the bull, for example, and then you've got all 3 of them represented right here. So that's kind of a cool little throwback. And I'm cool we got 3 unique tokens made for these. I think that's a really neat touch. I love when we can do stuff like that. Then it ends with a little just reminder card in case you're newer to the game, what the phases are, what the formats are. All right, well that is the red-white deck. I realize since there are 5 decks, this video might get kind of long. So, hopefully you enjoy, or you skip around your heart's content. Now let's move from the red-white deck into the red-blue deck. Prismari Performance. Zephi, Thunder Conductor, is here. I'm going to use this cool pull tab on the bottom to get in this time. Blue-red, it says so right there. Pull it out from the bottom. Looks great. You got the deck hanging out right here. You got, once again, all these punch-out counters around the side. You got your Zephi right there. You got this little bonus dividery thing right here. But enough about that. Let's crack this open. This is your deck box. You've got your life wheel. Once again, it's in nice Prismari colors, blue and red with the Prismari symbol right there, which is pretty cool. Represent. You've got this little insert. Once again, you've seen this side before. It's the same learn to play side as previously. Here's all the flavor information you could want. I'm not going to read it all out to you. Once again, if you want to know what it says, pause the video. You can check it out. Check it out yourself. There's some cool flavor information about Octavia and Riona and Veyran here at the bottom. You might not already know. Talked about Zephi a little bit in a previous video. But let's get into the deck. And Zephi, the Thunder Conductor. Yes, and before, if there's someone in the comments will point it out otherwise, I know that the name is incorrect in the rules text versus the printed version. Here's the thick version, once again, of the Thunder Conductor right here. Right, you'll notice that it says Thunder Collector right there instead of Thunder Conductor. That is an error on our end, totally. I appreciate all the fans out there pointing it out. We're definitely aware of it. And, we've made some errors in the past when it comes to printing of cards. I always think about Oboro Envoy, which had a mechanical one, which said target creature gets -X/-0 until... target creature gets -X/-0. Not until end of turn, just forever. It was accidentally printed on the card. So that's one that we've done in the past. Walking Atlas was supposed to be an artifact creature, but accidentally was left off. And I think what happened with this card is just the name changed, and this part wasn't cut. I do think Thunder Conductor is a pretty sweet name, though, given that it's he's a conductor in terms of the orchestra, but also there's the thunder conduction joke there too. So if we ever reprint this card, we'll change that, of course, in a future Magic set. But that's what it is. Right here, it is an oddity. Thanks for pointing it out. And our editing team works really hard. They do a ton of amazing work. And even though one thing like this might slip through, I really have a big hats off to them because they do stuff. I would certainly make way more errors than them if I were doing their job. So hats off to the editors, even though you do occasionally get funny things like this. And once again, it's not mechanical. We can all smile and laugh at it. So there's that. Here is Veyran, the Voice of Duality. I remember seeing this card the first time, and I was like, "Yeah, this is awesome. I don't know what else it needs. Just copying all of your triggers on instant sorcery spells is good enough for me." And then I think Corey went in and added on the Magecraft ability to boot. So this card is very exciting. I cannot wait to see what decks people build with this, with all kinds of spellcasting triggers. Plus, it's on a Freak Commander, so that's pretty awesome. All right, go into some Strixhaven cards here first. Those are kind of hanging out here at the top with the Resculpt, Stormkiln Artist, Emerald Masterpiece, Expressive Iteration, and Rutha. We wanted to make sure that, once again, our Commander decks had some cards from the main set that fit the theme really well. It really helps it just tie into the world. Nice, right? When you have extra cards in your deck that say Prismari, on them. Study Hall, hang that right here. Seen those. All right, now let's keep on going. Brainstorm, a classic, very nice. Ponder. I include Ponder and Cantrips in a lot of my Commander decks, Ponder, Seraph Visions, but we don't often put these in Commander decks unless there's a reason for them to be. For example, Ponder went right into the blue, black, white library manipulation deck from Commander 2018. But here, when you want spells that will trigger your Commander, which is nice. We also look for a lot of ways to let you cast big spells. It doesn't actually require you all the mana for it, because Zephyr, the Thunder Conductor, wants you to do that. And Treasure Cruise, you seldom actually pay 8 mana to cast this card, but will still have a mana value of 8, so Zephyr can trigger it. And this deck is, I mean, casting spells in this deck is good, but really casting big spells is the best. So, you know, cheating out your Treasure Cruise is really, really nice. There's Faithless Looting again. Hello, Faithless Looting. Here's another big spell. This is another great example. Oh, it's a land cycler early, or it's a big spell you can cast late in the game, which is nice. Mana Geyser will definitely help you cast some of those spells too. Pretty good job there. All kinds of fun mana rocks, a couple cool lands, command tower. Okay, now we're into the brand new cards. Here is the Dazzling Sphinx. A lot of Sphingies have a lot of words on them. Dazzling Sphinx is no exception. It's, you know, you would attack trigger, you cast their top spell, which is pretty fun because you never know what you're going to get. I always love cards that inject a bit of variance into the game like this. You're never quite sure exactly what you're going to hit. And hopefully, if things go really well, you will hit a big mana cost spell to trigger your Zephyr. But yeah, I really love playing with cards like this. I keep putting them into sets, and people occasionally have to be like, Gavin, you can't make infinite of these. It's funny because as a competitive player, when I was playing professional Magic, I was like, I never want these cards around. Like, these are really frustrating. Cascade was a frustrating competitive mechanic. Bloodbraid Elf into Blightning and all that stuff. But in Commander, I find this kind of stuff really fun because it makes every game play out differently, and that's what we're really for here in Commander. Inspiring Refrain. I said a bit about this previously in my last video where I was opening up collector boosters. But yeah, we have this little dual cycle here. I'll just skip to it, of Inspiring Refrain and Rousing Refrain. 2 new Suspend cards. These are mirrored after a Suspend pair that was in Future Sight. Cards like Chronomatic Escape and Reality Strobe, stuff like that. Arcblade. And so these are kind of 2 rare Commander entries in here. This is a cycle I'd love to complete. I know players have asked if we're going to do more of them. I'm going to keep trying. We'll see if it actually happens, but I think they're pretty cool. Especially given that Commander games last a long time, you can do one of these and just keep getting value out of it the whole game, which is pretty fun. We've got the Muse Vortex. Once again, a great way to cast big mana cost spells. You can pay a ton of mana into this. Make sure you get your 10 mana trigger off of Zephyr, and then, you know, cast some sweet spells off of it. Draw a bunch of spells. Yes, this card is a delight as a Elemental Octopus. You'll note that there are 8 instances of 8 on the card, which I find very charming. You've got, of course, the 8 in the mana cost. You've got 8 right there, so that's 1, 2, 3. You've got 4 right here. The sneaky spelled out 8 for number 5. You've got Ward 8 for number 6, and then 8 right there for number 7 and number 8. So we always love making 8 jokes with Octopi. This is no exception. But also, it's a fun card to build around too. Or just go into your spell heavy deck. The Sly Instigator. Yes, we like Goad a lot. We've been having a lot of fun with Goad on the Commander team. And I think you'll expect to see a lot more Goad in the future. It just plays really well. It helps make sure that the game moves along. And a card like this is really nice because it not just goads, but tells them that their thing is safe, right? It's like, oh yeah, goad your thing and attack my opponent, but it's also safe. We're not going to kill it off by goading it, which is really cool. I'm curious what you all think about goad in the future. Like, should we do a lot more goad, a little more goad? Do you enjoy it? We're definitely experimenting a lot with goad. So please tell us in the comments down below. A great place to give me feedback. Here is the red Demonstrate card. Once again, a bit of that fun variance. Shuffling and exiling your top card. You don't know what it's going to be. And for 5 mana, you get to play 2 of your top free spells. It's good. It's awesome, right? Pretty good with Zephyr. Gives you, potentially 2 triggers off of whatever your next spell is. So lots of fun to be had there. A new Storm card. Yep. This was much discussed. Corey really wanted to do a new Storm card. He's like, you're making a spells deck. We should do a Storm card. And of course, the moment you hear that, like, your heart just clenches. You're like, no, we're not making this mistake again. But when you can only hit creatures with it, it turns out being pretty safe, right? Scatter Shot, I think, is the name of the card that only hits creatures. Grape Shot, of course, is referencing that in Time Spiral, but Scatter Shot is the card from Scourge, which deals 1 damage to a creature, and that never really saw any play. So this is a fun way that it's kind of a nice medium point. You know, it draws you some cards, kills off some things, but it's not going to kill off your opponent's face unless you have a Stuffy Doll or a Rash Taunter or something. So not out of the question for a red deck, but takes a little more work than just storm comboing your opponent off. One of the things we try and do when we make spells-heavy decks tend to favor a Johnny Jenny style players who love synergies and putting stuff together. But we want to make sure there's card types in here for all kinds of players. And so just making a really big creature that kind of hit the Timmy Tammy audience is something we try and do. And so often in these really spells-heavy decks or these very, once again, synergy-focused decks, we want to just make like some big, huge creature. And this is a great example of like, yep, you're just going to pay 7 mana, and it might just be like a 25/25, and that's sweet. Inferno Project. One of my favorite cards is in multiplayer in the olden times, and still now, but you don't see it as often, was Radiate. This was a card from Odyssey. This used to be like a face of multiplayer for a lot of folks. Radiate would see play all over the place. You'd play in your Emperor game, or someone would have it or whatever. You don't see it as much these days, but I thought this throwback on a creature would be pretty cool. So this is just a creature that casts Radiate. Fun times, by the way, with blinking, well, not blinking, but rescuing this back to your hand. It doesn't work with blinking, note this cast from your hand thing. But if you rescue it back to your hand and cast it again, which you can totally do in blue-red, it's a lot of fun to be head. There. Here is the red red face creature. This originally did something a little bit different. It made copies of itself that wasn't legendary, so it went exponential. You would make 1 copy of it when you cast a spell, and then you make another copy of it, or 2 more copies of it, and so on and so forth. That ended up being potentially just really, really dangerous. And plus, Adrix and Nev, the blue-green face commanders, were kind of doing a similar copying style space. So this feels a little bit different, I think. And yeah, it's pretty fun, pretty cool red commander to build around. This is another way to help make sure the games just end. This card is actually just totally ridiculous. You pump up all your creatures, and you hit them, and you cast that spell a bunch more times. Turns where you cast this card can take a very long time to resolve, depending on which spell it is that you cast under it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a pretty wild Magic card. And then we actually knocked a mana off of it because it was just so fun. Often our goal is like, knock a mana off the cards that are really, really fun to play with. I mean, not always, of course. We don't want to break anything that way. But if it's a big, 6 or 7 mana card, you can try for the little cheaper version if it's really fun. And this card's a lot of fun. Sometimes we'll leave a comment on a card of this feels too much like a standard card. Part of the goals of the decks in these commander products is to give you cards that are not just like what you'll find in a normal booster, right? Like we want to give you stuff that is specifically here, which is why we often dip into old weird mechanics or all kinds of stuff. This is one that definitely got a number of comments of like, this looks like a card that could go into standard. But I know Corey checked in with the play design team, and they're like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna make this in standard. Just go ahead and put it in a commander deck. So went here, and pretty fun for that. One thing Corey loves is X spells. He has a whatever that Sultai Hydra is. I think he's got a deck with that. So always looking for a fun new place to put X spells matter, and this deck has a few X spells, so that's why it's slid in here. The Elemental's Palette. Then we're back into the reprints. We got Ether Gale, which is a reference to Hex, by the way. Hex is a black card which kills off 6 creatures. Ether Gale bounces 6 creatures specifically. And Aether Spouts, if you really, really love Aether. Here's another great high mana cost card you can cheat out in the dig through time. Yes, the Primordials. I am responsible for these in Gatecrash, for better or worse. I made all of them except for the white one. We had a different design. That one originally searched for equipment for each opponent and put it out. But it wasn't. It felt weird because it was giving you a positive thing instead of taking something from all of your opponents. So we changed that. These have seen a lot of play in Commander over the years. Speaking of Storm, Mind's Desire, you cast it so fairly in Commander games as opposed to in Legacy and Vintage or whatever. Well, not Legacy, but in Vintage or whatever, where this kind of thing shows up. Yeah, I love Mind's Desire. I love playing it in Extended and Cube Draft sometimes. Still too. Talrand, yeah, we reprint Talrand a lot. I know we get some flack for this, but it kind of goes both ways because one of the things we try and do is hit expectations, and people love playing this card in their blue-red decks. Part of why we reprint it so much is that it just shows up in a lot of decks, And so yes, we reprinted a lot in our blue-red spells decks because people tend to like Talrand in their blue-red spells decks. So we want to meet those expectations. And plus, it's a cool legend. You know, people, like I said earlier, tend to like extra legends in their commander decks. So if you end up seeing a card a lot, you know, it gets reprinted a bunch of times. A lot of times the answer is just people tend to like that card. Not always the case. I'm sure we'll get to talking about Zetalpa a little later down the road. Look at all these awesome, sweet legends. Tali there too. This card, speaking of cards that can be sometimes high variance to play, this card's pretty fun. Really enjoy Sunbird's Invocation. I don't think that was on the radar for anybody as a commander card originally, but it's pretty fun to play with. The Goggles lets you copy spells too, super fun. Then we're into the mana base. Good mix of things. Some graveyard hate here in Scavenger Grounds. That's nice for shutting down some of the graveyard shenanigans that are out there. In general, I don't know that folks play enough graveyard hate in their decks. So we usually try to include some. One thing that we are aware of very keenly is that commander decks for a lot of people are like a template for building their own decks, right? They might buy a precon and then like learn how to build a deck from it. So we try to include like the good ratios of things when it comes to stuff like graveyard hate and show, yeah, you can main deck this sometimes. We get to the tokens for Drakes here with elementals on the back. We got some 4 treasures here with these constructs on the back. These are for the metallurgic summonings. And then these Call the Skybreaker elemental tokens with copy tokens on the back. And then a little your turn reminder. All right, through 2 decks. That's blue-red. Now, I mentioned Adrix Nev a moment ago. Let's hop over from blue-red into talking about blue-green. So here is Quantum Quandrix with Adrix Nev on the front. So we knew we were going to make this blue-green deck, and originally, we tried to hew the themes originally to being things that were in the main set, things that were pretty popular there, and kind of some of the themes. And so, for example, the green-black deck, which we'll get to in a little bit, has this life gain theme because the main set had life gain. Originally, tokens making and tokens matter was a much more prominent theme of the main set, so that's why we dove into it originally. But then when the main set kind of went away from that a little bit, we were like still playing really well, and so new kind of take on blue-green. It isn't just ramp. So let's try this out and stick with it here. And I think it turned out pretty fun, which we'll get to here in a moment. Here's once again, you can freeze frame this, read all about Ruxa, the vanilla commander, all kinds of fun stuff. I always enjoy the little flavor snippets we get of all the characters. It's a little window into a world, which is fun. And one of the cool things about these Settle-Line commander decks is we get to give you more of a window into Strixhaven. Normally you'd never hear about these characters, or maybe they'll only show up in flavor text. Doing it this way, you actually get to see them on cards, which is pretty cool. If we had these for Eldraine, for example, we probably, and we knew about the gingerbread person in advance, we probably would have put them in here, for example. So, all right, so here's Adrix and Nev on the front. Here's the cool thick version here on the back. So Adrix and Nev, this went through a lot of different designs, believe it or not. And Corey kept trying things out, and eventually came to me, and I was like, he's a little like not sure what he should do here, and I was like, have you just tried doubling season for tokens? And he's like, that seems a little simple. And I'm like, sometimes the lowest hanging fruit tastes the sweetest. We know players love doubling season. We know that a token doubling season commander, I guess Anointed Procession, or Primal Vigor, is that the other one? I can never remember exactly the name. But that's popular. It fits the theme of the deck. Let's put that on there. And we played it, and it just played great, and we knew people would love it, so we just put it out there as is. He did add Ward to it just because, it's a 4-mana commander. It's really integral to the deck. Making sure that your enabler doesn't get blown up right away was pretty important. So he had on a bit of extra protection. Also a way to show off the new mechanic from the set. But yeah, this card just played so well. It's a total slam dunk. But if you want something a little more wonky, here is Essex, the Fractal Bloom. Kind of a nod to a wide array of copying effects in the past, like Progenitor Mimic and many others. Yeah, this lets you make very weird tokens. Instead of making your normal token, you get to make a token of another creature you control. So a lot of fun to be had with this. I really can't wait to see what wild tokens people try and build decks with using this card. We get into some of the Strixhaven cards that are in here. The Biomathematician, the Eureka Moment, Golden Ratio. This weirdo with this mana cost, it's funny, we had so many debates about if we could do this or not, if players would freak out, or if they could understand how this would work. Also, debates around where this symbol should go. Should it go at the beginning, at the end? Where should it live? Eventually, I'm happy with this kind of middle solution of putting it in the middle there. If you have any thoughts, let me know. But yeah, in the end, it ended up being just fine, I think. And it was like, yeah, you can just do this. Sometimes we'll do things that we're like, this might be a really big deal. People might, go wild about this, and people will actually do that. And sometimes we do that. People are like, yeah, well, yeah, it was fine. Didn't really notice it. And colored artifacts were kind of that way. It's like, oh, neat. All right, let's keep playing Magic. And it's always funny how many internal debates we have. But it's important we have all those discussions and debates so that, when they are an important issue, it does get hit with the appropriate level of discussion. Novigen, Heart of Progress. Here's a card all the way from Dissension. Put some counters on your creatures. For the reprints, I'm just kind of sliding by them a little fast. I mean, I know a lot of you folks know what these cards do, and you can always freeze frame on them if you need to. I don't really need to explain why Kadama's Reach is good in Commander, for example. All right, Commander's Insight. One of the unique things we can do in Commander design is do things that reference your Commander and casting things from the command zone. Now, especially recently, post-Commander Legends, the set was finished much before Commander Legends, but in general now, we've got some feedback from Commander Legends about how some folks see those cards and it just feels kind of weird to them. It's like cards that specifically reference Commanders, like that's a little strange. It really makes it feel like I can't play them in other formats. Maybe don't do this as much. So we're kind of pulling back on it a little bit. Not to say that we aren't going to do it in the future. You'll still see it, but we want to make sure that it's intentional and it has a strong point when we do it. So this is it's probably still a pretty cool card that we would make, though. Drawing you X cards plus an extra card for every time you've cast your commander. Very good with partner commanders too. Not that partners need more help, but there you are. Curiosity Crafter. Yep. One of the things we wanted to do is what are ways that blue can interact with tokens in interesting ways. Curiosity for tokens just made a ton of sense. So that's where this guy came from. Plus he's a bird wizard. So who doesn't need more bird wizards on Strixhaven? Here's the blue face legend, or not the blue backup legend, whatever, not backup, blue bonus legend. That's what we call these things. The Magecraft token maker. This might enable some kind of new, cool blue tokens decks. I'm curious what folks do with this thing. All the way back in Commander 2018, I had this card that read 4 mana, and it said you gain control of all tokens, and it had cycling 2. And it was so polarizing. Some people loved this card. Some people were like, this card is infuriating. And eventually I cut it from the set because it just didn't make sense in the decks, but I always kept that design in the back of my mind. So to see this thing finally come out, you don't gain control of the tokens. That was part of the brutal part of it. But just specifically balances all tokens to deal with them in Commander, or saves all your tokens. It makes this card pretty interesting, pretty multifaceted. So curious to see, if this ends up making people's tokens decks of all kinds. But certainly here with big tokens, which is often what blue-green is doing here, is big tokens. Makes a lot of sense. One of the really fun things to do, we found, was create token copies of your normal creatures and then create extra copies of those. So this is pretty fun because you get to copy whatever sweet creature you have, and then Adrix and Nev will make an additional copy of it. And I think it's also worth noting, Adrix and Nev does not limit themselves only to creatures. It is any kind of token that you create. So if you replication technique your land, well, you'll get 2 lands. So it is kind of a weird blue mana ramp form. So keep that in mind, right? You could demonstrate replication technique and actually get 2 lands out of it, or 4 lands with Adrix and Nev on the battlefield. So, not the worst. I remember seeing this card and smiling. I always love it when we make cards for our Sea Monsters decks. Someday, not yet, but someday I think we'll do like a Sea Monsters Commander product. That'd be pretty fun. But this is a card that goes right into there. Put a Rixwithies as your commander or something and go to town. I know the Scott Larraby's of the world will be really happy about this. And also makes you a big token, of course, which is great for Adrix and Nev and any kind of effect that allows you to populate or what have you. Speaking of awesome ways to get tokens, what's better than making copies of your own thing? Once again, that variance of making sweet copies of your opponent's thing. This is like a much nicer gather specimens. And yeah, this card is pretty cool. Respond to a thing that puts a lot of things on the battlefield, like a tooth and nail or whatever, for extra fun here. See the unwritten, that kind of thing. Once again, a colored equipment hanging out here. We're experimenting with this more. And this is, more kind of a living weapon Living Weapon Riff, where it comes with a creature, and then, you know, you can move it off that creature if you want to, which is cool. We started this cycle of a long time ago. There's Bastion Protector in white, which gave your creature indestructible, your commander indestructible. Then I made Bloodline Steward, maybe. Anyway, it's a 4-mana 4/4 that gives your commander +2/+2 in haste. And then I thought we'd finish out the cycle, but we never really got to making all the other ones. But for this set, we picked the mantle back up, decided to make a green one, pumps your commander and gives it hexproof. Now we just got to finish it out, right? There's a couple more to make. You can speculate down below maybe what they would be, but I would like to get the rest of them out in the world. I think these are fun cards, pump up your commanders. They are really good with partners. The world doesn't need more partner help, but, you know, can't design around partners forever, every single time. Paradox Zone. This is a card that it can take you a while to read to kind of figure out what it does, but just doubling up your counters is always a really fun thing to do. We know players love doubling their counters, and this just doubles a lot of things, which is pretty cool. There's probably a really strong math reference here that I don't get because I'm an English major. But anyway, when we get to Silver Quill, I'll get some of those references. A vanilla commander. This card made me smile so much when we saw it, and the fact that it ended up being a bear makes me so happy. One of the tricky things with this card was figuring out how you could grant your vanilla creatures things that wasn't an ability, because the moment you granted an ability, there's all kinds of problems that occur. This was a great solution of it's a nice thing to have that isn't literally an ability, right? This extra thing. So that's kind of cool. And a great solve. I look forward to someone making their vanilla creatures deck, lots of bears or what have you with this. Sequence Engine, hanging out here. It gives you a bit of a use of stuff in your graveyard. The fractals, of course, are the key part of blue and green. They're the token for this set. So playing around with those in Commander and scaling up those tokens, the counters on the tokens, is a pretty cool thing to do. All the others had set sizes, but allowing you to key off of different things in this deck was pretty fun. And of course, with all the token making, or token carrying, it's nice to make some cool tokens. Oversimplify. This is a card that's been much discussed. I know that it's been much discussed internally too when we were working on it. I think it's been discussed again in the past couple of weeks once this card's been previewed. You know, blue-green doesn't normally get a board sweeper. The point that the argument is basically, yes, that is the board sweeper, but it gives someone a very large, very relevant token. Gives everyone very relevant tokens, and you can just die to those if you're not careful. You know, I think everyone is kind of on different sides about this card. I know when I saw this card, I was extremely surprised, but the Council of Colors at the time was good with it. I don't know that they still would be, especially blue and green. Getting rid of all creatures forever Raven forming style is something that, you know, we've talked a lot about. But I'll save that for a future video where we talk about color pie changes and things that we're looking at. But yeah, this card, much discussed on this one. A lot of discussion occurred here. I'm curious to see how much this actually sees play, I will say. Despite all the discussion, I don't know if this card will actually be good enough to make commander decks. But, you know, regardless, from a color pie perspective, there's a lot of interesting talk to be had there. Geometric Nexus. Yes, indeed. Blue-red isn't the only color with fun instant sorcery matter stuff. This is a nice card that can make you a bunch of extra tokens for your spells. You know, I don't really have much to say besides that. I don't know much about the design of this card, so just kind of showed up one day. You know, as reference, I was not the lead designer of the set. Corey Bowen was, but I did the architecture for it. So I would give comments on cards. I would often talk with Corey, you know, every week many times about the cards in his set. I would occasionally pitch design ideas, but sometimes cards would just show up and I don't know where they came from. Geometric Nexus is an oddity. I truly don't know anything about it. I don't have anything interesting to say about this card, but there you go. All right, going through the reprints here. Got some. Talk about a sweet token to make an extra copy of. Desolation Twin with your commander in play is fun. Once again, it's really fun to, when you're designing these commander precons, to go through and try and find all kinds of weird, wonky tokens you can create. Like, what are some unusual things you can do? Oh, okay, make these 1/1 Death Touch tokens from this Hornet Queen. That's kind of cool. Or, you know, oh, make extra elephant tokens from this card. So it's pretty fun. Although you do run into a challenge when you get to the putting tokens in the product phase of like the physical tokens we'll get to in a second. Hey, you only get, you know, so many tokens for these decks. trying to make sure they all fit within these confines. Here's a Snake Matters card. Another legendary creature. Master Biomancer, I made this one. I made my first team was Gate Crash. I had a lot of fun making stuff. This card, I think, by the way, really underplayed. Idol of Oblivion. Not enough people put this card in their deck. It's like 2 mana. In a lot of commander decks that have any kind of tokens focus, it's a 2 mana artifact that is a personal Howling Mine that ends up making a big creature later on, which is nice. So here's the thing I'm curious about. We have this debate a lot internally. What do you think about Hideaway? We made the 5 Hideaway lands in Lorwyn. We made the 1 additional card in Modern Horizons. There's a lot of debate around Hideaway as to if we should do more of it. It has a lot of weird things baked in, right? There is, it comes into play tapped, which is baked into the mechanic, which is very, very, very silly. We should not have done that because now you make a creature and it comes into play tapped. But yeah, should we make more Hideaway lands? You know, should we make some creatures that have it? Do you enjoy this kind of thing? Let me know in the comments what you think. Plenty of people with a lot of opinions. Some people are like, yeah, we should have just never done it. We baked this come to play tap thing in the reminder text. It's very silly. Some people are like, it's super fun. I'd love to know what you think. It's a lot of value on a land. So, all right. So, tokens. Copy tokens as a catch-all. Fractals on the other side. Lots of ways you can copy stuff in this deck. You got beasts. You got these are from the Reef Worm. Doubling up these is pretty fun. Tokens that die into something else. Here's a literal worm, not a reef worm. There's the Kraken you get off the reef worm as well. And also the 9/9, whatever, the sea monster card I talked about earlier. Pongify token, the frog lizard. Perfect. There's your Eldrazi. And a lot of I think this is for many of these cards, this is the first time they're showing up in the new token frame too. So that's kind of a cool little bonus. Champion of Wits. That's a really fun one to not embalm, but Mortalify, whatever the final name ended up being. I know the playtest names of things really well. It's funny, I did this Magic trivia show recently with Max, who runs this great show called Battle of Wits. It's on YouTube. You can go check it out. The episode with me actually just went up. And one of the things that I always joke about is I'm really good at trivia from before I started working at Wizards when it comes to Magic card trivia. But I am very bad when it comes to names of things from the past 10 years of Magic, because we'll just change names all the time, and unless it's a marquee card, I just don't know it. So going on to Witherbloom Witchcraft, here it is right here. You could probably be like name stuff from 20 years ago, no problem. Name a bunch of commons from Kaldheim, and I'll just give you all their playtest names. All right, so here we are. The Witherbloom Commander deck featuring Willow Dusk, which, by the way, I did a great interview with Jesper Ising, the person who did the art for Willow Dusk last week or the week before. I really recommend going and taking a look at that interview if you haven't. I thought it was fantastic. And I know it's like, oh, Gavin's just plugging his thing, but really, I was super moved by the interview. I cut very, very little from our conversation. Normally, I edit things down and do a bunch of stuff, but it was just a truly amazing discussion, and he did a great job at it. Here's your life wheel. I feel like if you're an artist or someone who loves creating things, I could listen to Jesper talk is awesome. He did so many cool Magic cards. Anyway, enough about Jesper. There's a whole video you can watch about that. But yeah, there's Willow Dusk right there. And I learned about Tavash and Eudora, and of course the Chef, the much discussed Chef. When I released that video with all the hints about what was coming up in Commander, I did not guess that the Chef would be one of the most popular ones. But I was asked every day, basically after that video came out, by people on Twitter, hey, when are we seeing the Chef? I'm excited about the Chef. Telling me about this Chef. So I look forward to seeing all the Chefs out there make sweet Commander decks around Guillaume, which I think is how you pronounce their name. I'm not 100% sure. I have not looked at the pronunciation guide, so I apologize. I did not do that in advance of this. There's Willow Dusk right there. So the green-black deck, this one had a bit of an interesting story. The green-black deck, I think, went through the most changes of, I know it went through the most changes of any of the pre-constructed decks this time around. We tried a lot of things. It actually started off as life gain, but then as we started playing with it, there were a lot of challenges of the game is going on too long because players kept gaining so much life gain not being very good to do. Then we ramped it up, and life gain was too good to do, and there was a lot of challenges with this. So we tried out a lot of other things. We tried out green-black sacrifice, which is also a theme you see some of in the main set. We tried out green-black spellcasting, like Magecraft style stuff. But one of the problems with that was there just were so few cards in the rest of Magic that could go in there that it was pretty weak. And you really relied on all the new cards. We had to make a ton of new Magecraft cards to make it work. So we went back to the life gain thing, but we decided, what if it also cared about you losing life? And that was a great way to help tamp down on the life gain problem of you would gain 60 life and the game would go on forever because you were also spending your life. But it gave a different, interesting axis of a way to play your commander. And so that's kind of where Willow Dusk End came from, and it's kind of a slightly tweaked take on the original theme. Originally, Black Green in the main set was all about life gain. It ended up being only a sub theme of the college. But there's Guillaume, the Master Chef. Really, really happy we made this. I love chefs. I mean, I'm a huge foodie, so just getting that represented on a Magic card, I think is really cool when you can see something like that. And I hope every chef around the world who plays Magic tries building a commander deck around this. If you have a fun one, let me know in the comments. All right, so here's some cards from the main set. Once again, here's one of those life gain matter cards we see in the main set right there with Dina, the Soul Steeper, and the Mortality Sphere. You still see the theme a little bit in the main set. Some life gain matters cards, the Johnny Pridemate style cards of the world, like this Bloodthirsty Aerialist is nice. All kinds of ways to, once again, spend life with cards like Greed and Reckless Spite, and also gain life. And it's nice, normally the spend life cards, a lot of folks don't like those, especially if they're newer to the game, which these commander decks often hit. But when your commander rewards you for doing it, we found that it played a lot better and people got a lot more excited about losing life, as funny as it was. Here's a great way to gain a little bit of life every turn, Pristine Talisman. Fun fact about this card, it was a giveaway in the Mirrodin Besieged. There was a special game day, and you could get a copy of Pristine Talisman at that game day as a preview of that card, and maybe Suture Priest, I think, were the two. Good stuff. Sundroplet. This was a constructed card back in the day. You would sideboard this against burn decks. Funny to see it here in this commander deck. All right, now we're on to the new cards. So let's talk about Blight Mound. One of the things we knew players would love were the pests. We saw the art for them, and we're like, people are going to love these pests. So making a pest tribal card was something Corey came up with and thought would just be a blast. And, it's not going to help you build your entire pest deck, but if you have Blex or something as your commander, this is a pretty fun enchantment to put into your deck. And the great thing about the pest, of course, is they gain you life, so it works really well with the deck's themes. So there's your Blight Mound for you. This card was discussed a lot, and I'll tell you exactly why, and it was the pest that I just mentioned. There were a lot of people who were frustrated that you would cast Essence Pulse, you would gain 2 life, you would kill everything off, and then your pest would die, and you would gain more life. And it was like, why is there another way we can do this order? It feels very unnatural. For example, one thing that was pitched was, you gain 2 life, everything is -X/-X. Whenever you gain life this turn, everything gets -1/-1 for every life that you gain, basically. So it would hit the life gain that happened afterward. Ultimately, that was just too many words, and it was kind of confusing to read. So it is a slightly weird interaction with the pest tokens, where you gain some life, then you kill off your pest, and then you gain more life. But hey, that's how it works. I do love this model of you gain some life, and then you do a thing for it that you already want to do, because it's like, hey, at its worst, this is a 4-mana infest. And in this deck, a lot of the time, you make it a full-on board clear. You can kind of control a little bit to get to let your stuff survive if you're careful about it. So this is a really, really cool design. This card scares me, the Bloodland or the Marshland Bloodcaster. Whenever you are able to cast a spell for free by paying life, that sets off alarm bells in my head. But on a 5-mana creature that requires a turn to wait, that helps fix it up a little bit. The tap symbol is super important here. One thing that we've learned a lot is if you're going to make an effect like this, make it gated by having to wait a turn, right? There's a lot of ways to make sure it's not too dangerous when you give every opponent at the table an entire turn to interact with it, kill it off, sweep the board, whatever. So here is Tivosh, the Gloom Summoner. I know a lot of folks are very excited about this card as a way to play a true life loss deck. Excuse me, needed a sip of water there. That's the deal about these long videos. Yeah, you can make a really cool life gain, life loss deck with this card, and make some demons along the way. This is another one I don't actually know too much about the full-on design of, other than it was just, hey, let's try and make a card that would really play up this deck's themes in a slightly different way. Vane Witch Coven, getting some warlocks in the mix here. This is just a fun life gain matters card. One of the things we want to do is, hey, what's good in Commander? Usually gaining life is not good in Commander. In fact, gaining life gets you attacked in Commander. I always joke about how the gain lands are actually downside in Commander because you play one on turn 1 and everyone just attacks you for it anyway. So life gain usually not super good in Commander. What are ways you can translate life into being good? This is a way to do it, the Vein Witch Coven. You gain life, you get cards back from your graveyard, creature cards back from your graveyard, which is just a naturally good thing that you want to do. Here's another, the other mirror to this to this card, the Essence Pulse of gaining you some life and then doing a thing based on how much life you gained on this Blossoming Bog Beast. One thing that I'll note is, so Magic, there's a lot of general design rules that we have and things that we try and do. But every set is designed by, well, not a different person, because obviously the same people design sets. But, you know, different designers have different personalities, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And so you can tell when you, for example, play a main set, you can always tell the difference, for me at least, between like an Eric Lauer-led design set versus a Dave Humphreys-led design set versus a, whoever, like go down the list, versus an Ian Duke-led design set or whatever, Zach Hill-led design set. They all have very different feelings. And the core Magic gameplay is the same. There's a lot of the good heuristics we try and do, but the trappings are a little bit different. And with Commander decks, where the cards are so personalized to the decks, you really feel that. And something Corey likes a lot is this mirrored pair idea. And you saw this in the white-red deck, for example, with the mirrored pair of the 2 land cyclers, the artifact creature land cyclers. And you see it again here. So it's kind of a thing you can expect from Corey's products is that mirrored pair. Keep an eye out for those. Making your spells cost less for the amount of life you gained is pretty sweet. This is another great example of an effect that can be pretty powerful, but you have to play life gain to do it, so it's, you know, usually pretty safe. There might be some combo you can pull off with artifact creatures in this, so I guess go nuts, Johnny Jenny players. But you know, on a non-legendary creature, you have to be able to find this card to pull it off. It's a 6-mana card. So usually our line is, if it's not a legendary creature, so it's not in your command zone, and it costs a bunch of mana, yep, there's ridiculous infinite combos you can probably pull off, but you know, there's pretty wild stuff you can do in Commander when you get to this point in the game anyway. So let's let you do it. And of course, most of the time you're just playing this for fair and casting your big creatures for cheap, which is cool. Here's the green technique, gives you something back. The life gain was added on, of course, because the life gain is relevant for this deck, which is kind of cool. More stuff for pests, blows up artifacts or enchantments. Once again, Commander decks, the precons are a great template for people who are coming into the game, and so make sure that your deck has enough of these staple effects is really important. And also in the Biodome, we want to make sure that the games do play out differently, and we often make a lot of enchantments and artifacts, so having ways to blow them up is really nice. One thing we are wary of before we go on to the next card is we try to not make too many cards that blow up mana rocks early, because it really sucks when you're using your Arcane Signet or whatever to cast your early game spells, and you're a little mana light, and someone just shatters your mana rock. It just feels horrible. So a lot of the times we put our artifact destruction on spells that won't be cast till later in the game. And this is a great example of, oh, well, hey, you're not going to probably play this turn 3. I mean, you could, I guess, but you're probably not going to play this on turn 3 just to smash up their artifact. You're going to wait till later in the game once hopefully everyone's mana has developed. So the X cost here is a tricky way of doing that. Because if this was, not that we'd make this card for Commander, but if it was just a 3-mana card that did this one time, for example, you'd see people just fire it off on turn 3 on whatever signet they saw, and that's usually not very great for the gameplay. This card I remember a lot of different versions of because we wanted to make sure it wasn't too easy to get it back. Originally, actually, it just came back for free out of your graveyard if you hit like a certain life threshold. Maybe if you had gained 4 life this turn, but that was potentially too broken. It also triggered at every end step for a while, but it was easy to forget, and it was weird that you could cast on other players' turns. Oh, it was also, there's a version for a while that if you had gained any life, you could cast it from your graveyard at any time during your turn, and that was like a weird order of operations style thing. So anyway, we ended up with this version that just gives you a defined window. You do this during your end step. You don't have to worry about all the times you could do this or forget about it or whatever. And then give you a reward for gaining a lot of life. So you just gain any life, you can trigger this. A lot of life, you can cast it for cheaper, which is cool. There's also a weird thing where we found that lifelink was kind of bad in this deck, even though it's a life gain deck, because a lot of your stuff triggers. A lot of stuff triggers you want to be things that you want to do during combat. For example, giving your creature +1/+1 counter is a thing that you want to happen during combat and not right after combat happens. This is a nice one in that you can gain all the life from any life linkers you might have in combat, and then cast it at the end of your turn for cheaper, which is cool. The Trudge Garden. This is a new Life Game Matters card we made. I think we'd make some stuff like this for white too. I know a lot of folks have asked, could something like this be a white card? I totally think something like this could be a white card. So normally white doesn't make 4/4s. Not saying it couldn't ever, but we'd probably go wide and have to make 4 1/1s or something instead. But yeah, we could make a card like this in white for sure. This card was discussed a lot. There were a lot of versions of it. Originally, it didn't actually bring them back as straight up forests in this sense. It like brought them back, I think, with a counter, and they couldn't attack or block, and that was really complicated. And a lot of things were tried out for this. But eventually, Tayback's just like, hey, I think we can do this thing, or whoever the rules manager was working on the rules at the time was just like, hey, I think we can do this thing. We can bring back them as face down cards, and these won't be morphs. So we'll write it to make it work that way. And this is pretty cool. I love it when it's just very straightforward. Of yeah, you put this down in your mana row, and it's a land. You know how that works, and it's pretty cool. Fun thing you can do with it, though, is you can bounce that face-down card back to your hand and get it back. So if you have Maloku the Clouded Mirror in play or whatever, a lot of fun to be had there with reusing stuff. So just keep that in mind. Just a little thought for you. Love the art on this one, the Revival Experiment. Really cool work by Jeremy Wilson here. Kind of unique style. Almost looks like it could be a Mystic Archive. Even though black-green in this set is not about graveyard recursion in the Golgari sense, in Commander, it's still just so good to have some of this around. So yeah, we did break and make a few cards like this that bring stuff back. It's a pretty fun mass reanimation card. Once again, helps make those games end. Here's one of the lifelink cards I was mentioning earlier. It's good to have some life gain triggers that you want to get outside of combat, and this will help make that happen. One thing we had a long debate about on this card, believe it or not, is if you should be able to target other players' commanders with this. We're always like, is this kind of politic thing good? Is it just frustrating to have around? Does it make the games take too long because you're discussing them? On this card, we figured that, you would be the one to offer it up to someone if you were really interested. So yeah, you can target your buddy's thing and maybe they'll help you out for it. Attack someone else. I'll give you the Witch's Clinic activation, right? It's kind of a fun thing. We are worried about how many rare lands we make in this Commander products because, sometimes if they want to go into every deck or a lot of decks, it's just like it can creep out people's mana bases. But this is one that I think will not go into every Commander deck. It will only go into some, so it makes me happier about it. Oh, hey, there's Blood Tracker. A nice reprint from Commander 2018. I remember making that card. Here's some Sweepers, some Life Gain Matters stuff. Gearhawk, Planeswalker. I think we talked about it, and I don't know the deck list 100% offhand, but I think it's true that there's a Planeswalker in every deck. This is something we started doing a couple Commander sets ago, and we don't always stick to it, but people generally like Planeswalkers. Putting one in every deck is kind of a sweet additional thing you can crack open. Bonus when they're like Jaretti, and they can also be your commander. But here's a card that's a reprint from the Brawl decks, so cool to get more of these out in the world. The Gluttonous Troll here. Hammer's Archive. This is a pretty sweet card. This is a great way to, it's funny, in most decks you want to double your card draws. You'll do a little bit of that here. But in this one, you want to double your life gain. So it's funny to see that card in like a slightly different light, which is cool. Well of Lost Dreams. Yeah, this is a sweet reprint too. A lot of people probably didn't even know this card existed from Darksteel, I believe. But yeah, that's always been a fun one to play with. High Market, another one. A lot of folks play this for just that free sacrifice outlet. Here, the life gain can actually be relevant, which is pretty cool. A great reprint there. And, just a smorgasbord of lands. Sapseep Forest, a cycle a lot of players probably don't know about. Mistveil Plains and Sapseep Forest and all that kind of stuff. Leech-Ridden Swamp, I think, is the black one from it's a Shadowmoor cycle. All right, here we've got some delicious-looking food. Yum, yum, yum. Now, here's a fun thing. This is food made by the Commander, because there's this little Witherbloom symbol right there. This isn't just like your normal Eldraine food. No. This is from Guillaume, the chef himself. He's going to cook up some great, tasty food tokens for everyone. Food on one side, you got some sapperlings and plenty of cute, adorable pests on the other side here. You got some demons for the Black Commander, and some fungus beasts over on this side. So cool stuff. All right, we are through 4 of the decks. We just have one more left to go. I saved my college for last. It's time for the Silvercool Statement featuring Brina, the Demagogue, as the commander. Fun fact about this deck, I said this in a previous video, but you might have missed it, which is that Sheldon Menery was actually the designer on this deck. The way that Commander design teams work is generally one person kind of leads up the design for an individual deck. Now, that doesn't mean they make all the calls for it, but they I'm surrounded by boxes in case you're hearing stuff fall down. All these cardboard boxes cause some noise. But Sheldon was, anyway, they don't make all the calls on it, but they're the ones leading it up and responsible for picking reprints a lot of the times and stuff like that. And so Sheldon, we brought in to Wizards for a few months and actually was the lead on this black-white commander deck. It was his idea to make it politics because Sheldon loves political decks. I think he did a pretty cool job on it too. So if you are on Twitter, send Sheldon your thanks. That was really cool. He got to work on Magic. Really happy to bring him in, and I would happily bring him back. I hope we get to do so in a future set. So telling people you like the black-white commander deck is a great way to help us bring Sheldon back in again. Sheldon, of course, if you don't know, Sheldon Menery is kind of the godfather of Commander. He is basically, I don't know about creating the format. It was really a group of folks that worked on it together, but he definitely helped popularize it and grew it into what it is today. So it was truly an honor to get to work with them on this product and get to do a lot of fun design work and chat Magic about with him and have that connection in the building. Would happily have him back to work with again. Here's Brina, once again, that politics commander. Now, here's the thing. We tried politics to start off with. It was cool. It was a great theme. But we did quickly find that politics was not the only thing this deck could be doing. Some players really like politics, but we wanted to have a couple different themes built in here. For someone who didn't like politics necessarily, and also because, there's not cards in Magic that specifically call out politics. It's just like a thing that you can do a lot of. So this card puts +1/+1 counters on creatures you control, and the deck does have some things that care about counters. So it's politics with also some counters going on. So you'll see that here on Brina. You also see that on Felisa, which, by the way, Mentor I thought was a great callback keyword to put on here. So that's a pretty cool throwback to Guilds of Ravnica block. But yeah, here is Felisa, the Thing of Silverquill, who puts counters on your creatures, which is nice, and cares about you having counters. So it's a straight up counters matters backup commander. All right, there's another Secret Rendezvous. Once again, curious on what you think about this card once you play it in Commander. Specifically for Commander is what I care about, people's thoughts there. Ghostly Prison. A lot of you might not have seen this art before, by the way. So here's Ghostly Prison's artwork. I think that's a relatively new piece, which is cool. Some fun old political cards here. Orzhov Advocist. We talked for a long time creatively if putting cards in this deck that had the guild names in them was wrong, because it's well, we're trying to get people to say Silverquill, not Orzhov, so is putting that here incorrect. And eventually it was just no, the new cards are the new cards. Reprints should be from anywhere. Let's put the right cards in this deck. And I'm really happy we made that decision because it doesn't really feel creatively discordant. It's no more creatively discordant than seeing, I don't know, some card from some other weird world in here, a Kamigawa card show up in here or whatever. So, even though, yes, Orzhov is black-white on Ravnica and Silverquill is black-white on Strixhaven or in Strixhaven, I don't think it's a problem. Although if that offended you and you thought that was weird, let me know in the comments below. It'd be cool to get some data points on other sides. I know I always ask you to post things in the comments below. If I do that too much, let me know, I guess, in the comments below. Awkward. It's the way I have to communicate with you. I don't know, tweet at me, post on Instagram instead. Send me a TikTok, whatever. You can give me your feedback in a different way, I guess. Just the comments are the easiest way for me to read it and the easiest way for someone watching this video to say something. Anyway, on to more important things. Like this Combat Calligrapher. A big question with cards like this is always, should something happen when this card goes away? Because there's this weird tension between giving your opponents a bunch of stuff, but then the moment this card gets blown up, they can start attacking you again. When I was making Varchild in Commander 2018, I bent over backwards and make sure that if you gave people tokens, the tokens couldn't then attack you later on. With this card, we talked about it, but decided, nope, that's just one of the things that can happen if you play this card. You might get attacked by Flying Inklings. Curious to know what you all think about it, but eventually you can't just write all kinds of buyout text on every card, and some amount of tension is good. You don't want every card to just be yes, I can play this and I will never have to fear about anything. Yeah, you play politics, occasionally you're going to get burned. So all the way back in Commander 2017, Mark Gottlieb pitched this cycle of cards. It's called Vengeance or something. I don't remember, but it was a mechanic, and it was when they came into play, you secretly chose an opponent, and then you did something to that opponent. If they triggered your thing, if they did a specific action, you could reveal it and hurt that opponent, but they didn't know which you had chosen, right? So there was a cycle of them, and what we realized in making the cycle was that there was really only 2 good designs that we liked. There was the white one, which we made in that set, Stalking Leonin, which exiles a creature that's attacking you. And there was the red one, which I saved and put in the next set I worked on, Commander 2018, which I think redirects a spell. Is that what that one did? It's on the red one. Yeah, it redirects a spell. I don't remember the name of that one, Commander 2018. But anyway, so then we're like, hey, we made the 2 good ones. We don't need to do any more of these. We're not just going to cycle it out for the purposes of doing it. Well, clever Lee, when we got to this set, there was like, wait a second. There might be another good white one we could do. So yes, it is a second white member of this quote-unquote cycle. It's not really a cycle. Please don't ask for the other ones. But yeah, it's a different take on the secretly choose thing. One thing to keep in mind with this card in particular is that if that target permanent goes away, you will not gain the protection. So be careful when you're choosing that permanent. If someone has a removal spell, this ability will fizzle. But yeah, this is a fun little one to be able to choose an opponent, and then kind of everyone is like, ooh, who have you chosen? I enjoy these kind of little mini games. Great white political commander. I saw this in the file and loved it. In fact, one of the fun things about Magic Design, or not about fun things, but weird quirks, is you tend to see the white cards a lot because whenever you search for a file, the white cards always show up first because they show up in Wooburg order. And this card would always pop up whenever I searched for the set on the front page. And I always smiled whenever I saw it. So yeah, just really cool, political, countery, mattering commander. I look forward to seeing what folks build with this one. Promise of Loyalty. I think this card was Sheldon's idea originally. But, you know, we all love the Vows. The Vows play really great. And this is a way to both sweep the board, but keep a few things around that can only attack your opponents, which is a pretty cool sweeper. It's a cool take on a sweeper. And I actually think this card is going to be pretty good enough to make a lot of actual Commander main decks, given that it, you know, kills everything off that could attack you, but then gives your opponents some creatures that will fight each other. So that's nice. The Scholarship Sponsor. Yeah, this is we're trying a lot of things for white right now. This is a mass catch-up card where everyone's going to catch up to the player with the most of something. I'm very curious to see how much this card gets played. So let me know if you're thinking about putting this into your decks. Well, once again, I have an interview with Ari coming up soon talking about white cards, so stay tuned. The Author of Shadows. This card had a lot of discussion around if it should exile all cards from all your opponent's graveyards, if it should exile one player's graveyard, or if it should only exile a specific card. And one of the things we're careful of when messing with graveyards in Commander is how much time it can take. Right, it's like, okay, look through everyone's graveyard, pick the best card, and so on. So with this card, the reason why we stuck it at just keeping it exiling all of your opponent's graveyards is so that you can just know you're hitting them all, and let me just look, someone hand me a stack of everyone's cards, and I'll just look through and pick the one that we want to cast. So that's kind of how this ended up this way. And yeah, it's a cool new take. Once again, a bit of a graveyard hate. Also a Shade. You don't see many of those, and one that doesn't pump nonetheless. So a Shade Warlock. It might be the first typed Shade we've ever done. I'll have to go check the tape for that, but I think that's true. This card went through a lot of templating challenges, I know, but really happy we ended up with it where it's at. I think it's pretty fun, both creatively as a plagiarist, but also plagiarist, but also as a way to copy counters. Counters see so much play in Commander, and it was pretty fun to find one here that could copy your opponent's counters, and especially in Counters Matters deck, it's a cool thing to have. This is a really cool political thing. So one thing we like doing in politics decks, or decks, Commander in general, but especially politics decks, is making what we call Rattlesnake Cards. These are cards, I think the name was maybe given originally by Anthony Alonji, I don't know for sure, but it's cards that just say, don't attack me. You could, but you don't really want to, right? Maybe something bad will happen. And Cunning Rhetoric to me is a great example of like, yeah, I mean, you could attack me, but I'm going to get a card from you, so there you go. Notably, if it's a land too, you can just play it. So on your next turn. So if even hitting lands off this isn't too bad, which is nice. I saw this card and was like, It's Staff of Domination on a commander. The 3 abilities plus the untap thing. This card went through a lot of versions, as you might expect with a card like this. The original idea stayed the same of like, hey, we're gonna have 3 abilities and untap thing. That was there for a while, but what the abilities were was really, really important. And like, is it okay if these are activated at instant speed was a big discussion, but ultimately, we just wanted to make a cool version of one that could be a really fun commander. So Fane the Broker came into being. Here's the black technique. Once again, a lot of iteration went on into the techniques and what they were doing. I think this one stayed the same though. Maybe the number of cards that it milled changed, but yeah, this one mostly stayed the same. And it's pretty cool that if you demonstrate it, you get to mill 10 cards total, and the second one gets to grab from both sections. So you don't have to necessarily take the same thing that you milled, which is nice. Keen Duel. So one thing we're careful about is we try not to make cards that will be like huge legacy staples in our commander decks. And Keen Duelist, there was some discussion around if this was going to be a legacy shot because, in your Sneak and Show deck or whatever, you could tutor for a like Eldrazi and put it on top of your deck and then kill your opponent with it. So we'll see, I guess. I think we agreed this probably wasn't there in Legacy, but we asked play design. They're like, yeah, it's probably okay. But if you're a Legacy player and you think you would play this card, do let me know. I'm very curious. Sting Study, once again, a card that references commanders. One thing that we've been trying to do is find things that make big, expensive commanders better, because the format has such pressure on it to just play cheap, efficient commanders, and especially with partners around, you feel a lot of that too. So with Sting Study, this is a card which is specifically good for having high mana cost commanders. I know the first thing I saw when I saw this is like, Progenitus, let's go, right? 5 mana, draw 10 if you want to. So this is something that will help you out if you're playing with a big commander in your deck. It's not good with all the 3 mana cost commanders a lot of folks like to play. So I am curious what you all think about this kind of thing, and if you agree that big mana cost commanders need help. I think I first made a roll at this with Geode Golem in Commander 2018, but that card was more or less a miss, I think, for most people. So we're gonna keep trying stuff in this space. Yeah, curious what you think about it. Ink Shield. I think I left a comment in Multiverse about this card, which was like, this card will be very memorable. Should be a lot of fun to play with. I think so anyway. Curious what you all think. Tempting Contract. This is one of the most discussed cards in the set, I think. There's some people, like me, I'll admit I was one of them, who's like, this card does nothing. Why would you play this card? And there are some people who are like, this card's awesome. And the thing about it is this card, like, my thing was like, you should always get a treasure. Why don't you always get a treasure? Because your opponent's going to just opt out, and this card will do nothing, right? It's Prisoner's Dilemma-y, or Tragedy of the Commons, or whatever metaphor you want to use, of if other players choose not to get a treasure token, you have spent 4 mana and nothing happens. But if anyone opts in, maybe they'll all opt in, you'll get treasure. And so, even though I don't know that I would put this card in my deck, there's a lot of people who have been like, yeah, you're going to play this and someone's going to make a treasure, and then someone else is going to make treasure and get into this arms race of making treasure back and forth. So I'm very curious to see how this card actually plays out. I think it's cool. This card will play very differently from play group to play group. I know I'm not going to put this into my decks because I'm not that kind of player. But on the flip side, you know what? If someone plays this against me, I probably will take the treasure a lot of the time. So maybe I'm just blowing smoke here. Maybe I won't on principle though. I feel like maybe I'm the kind of guy that just would be like, no, I'm not gonna do that on principle. There's Gideon, the white planeswalker. There. This card, Boreas Charger. Man, this was something I tried to make for white a long time ago in Commander 2018, and originally it put them all on the battlefield tapped, or it put the I think it put them all on the battlefield tapped. That's what it did a long time ago. Anyway, changed it. I wish I hadn't changed it in retrospect. I got a lot of feedback about maybe how it looked too powerful. That was, before we got as many notes about white as we have recently, and we've been trying to really amp up that level. But oh hey, there's a Stalking Leanin'. Another fun secretly choose the opponent card. I mentioned this one earlier. A lot of, in general, I'm pretty happy with the designs I've made. There's a few in my history I'm like, I wish I had changed that a little bit, or stuck with my guns. Okay, so the Talpa. I know this has been much discussion. You reprint the Talpa every time, and the answer is just, what a lot of decks want is just a big white finisher that will end games. We need games to end, and Zatalpa is really good at that. It's hard to deal with. It's an 8 mana cost flyer, deals a bunch of damage. It doesn't have lifelink, which is important. So it doesn't draw out the game even longer. So, just helps make the game end. and is a great way for a deck to finish out. It's great with plus one counters too, which this deck has a lot of. So it's kind of what was going on there. Fun old politics stuff. Here's one of the offering cards from the offering cycle that we had in one of the earlier Commander products. I think 2014 maybe, 2015. I don't know the earlier products quite as well as I know these ones. The first one I worked on was 2017, and from there I started to learn them pretty well. Oh yes, the Pendant of Prosperity. That's a fun one too. Victory Chimes as a fun Battle Bond card. I always love seeing Battle Bond cards just because I think about all the time put into that set, but all the excitement of it. Miko Core, by the way, this is a fun reprint. Making everyone draw a card. Once again, lets you play politics a little bit, right? Who wants to kill the person who lets everyone draw a card? Tainted Field. I get a lot of requests to do more Tainted style lands. I'm curious what you all think. I know a lot of folks find these lands very frustrating because you might just like not draw your swamp and they don't work or something. Maybe we'll do more. We did them in Torment. I think there's one that still hasn't been reprinted. Maybe Tainted Peak. Is that the one? Gotta get that reprinted somewhere. Here's these, and then we'll get to these guys. There's your Inklings, your fun little Inklings. Hanging out here. So many Inklings on the front, and then treasures on the back for all those tempting contract tokens you're gonna make. Zombies right here. A rule that we normally have for tokens is that you want you try and pick the. If your deck doesn't have a lot of tokens, like this one doesn't have a lot of different tokens, you try and add a lot of tokens of the to the deck of what you're going to be making the most of. In this case, a lot of treasures for the tempting contract, and then usually you want 2 copies of each creature. If you have more than 1 token of it that can be made, so that you can make a tapped one and an untapped one and use dice to represent them. But of course, in the case where you're only really making 1, like this 4/4 horror token, you're probably not making more than 1 of these in the deck. Then you don't really need more tokens. Anyway, there it is. We've gone through all 5 decks now. I'm pretty happy that I was actually surprised it only took an hour and a half to do so. I didn't talk about every single reprint card, but you all know what a lot of those cards do. Let me know what you all think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed me taking a look through the decks, any tweaks you'd have on future styles of it for future Commander products. But I really hope you all enjoyed this and that you have a better idea about which one you want to pick out, or at least know a few fun stories to tell your friends with. I'll talk with you again on Wednesday. And in the meantime, you have a lot of fun finding just the Commander deck for you. You got this. We've got foil strategic planning. Check out the foiling. I love the 3 cards there. That is rad. I feel like I could just keep going back and forth on this all day.